Welcome back to the Simplified Integration Podcast. Innovators, it's great to have you on for episode number 14. Integration is not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and I agree. You see, the problem with the way that most consulting groups approach medical integration is anything but simple. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's expensive, it's complicated, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. Enough is enough. There are far too many amazing integrated clinics that are struggling. Well, I'm on a mission to change that. What I've come to find from over 5 years working with integrated practices is that simplicity really is the secret. The old saying of less is more is true. Through a streamlined approach, I was able to create multiple successful 7-figure integrated clinics, and now I'm going to show you how you can do the same. Join me as I share with you the secrets to successful medical integration and practice growth. Join me on a journey to greater sophistication through innovation. I'm Dr. Andrew Wells, and welcome to the Simplified Integration Podcast.
Hey, Doc, great to have you back on. So I'm really excited to launch this 5-part series. This is part 1. And this is a topic on the fact that integration is not a one-size-fits-all solution for doctors and for clinics. And this whole topic came about because I sent out a recent survey to the people that follow me. And it was a 2-part survey. The first part was for doctors who are not yet integrated, but maybe tossing around the idea or curious about it. And my question for those people was, why haven't you integrated yet? Like, what are your concerns? What are your hesitations? Why haven't you jumped into that to integration? The second part of the survey was for those doctors who are integrated, what are your biggest frustrations with the integrated model? Now, some of the responses I got back were pretty predictable. Some were not what I expected. But for the group who is not yet integrated, almost all the responses were the same. So again, the question was, if you're not integrated yet, why haven't you? And almost it was like 87%, I think, of the people who responded said, I haven't integrated because of financial concerns. So that would be either I don't have the startup capital to integrate, or I'm concerned about how much money it costs to run integration, or they're just concerned because of the overall financial risk of running a program like that. And those people are right. And I'll also say those people are wrong. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but there's 2 sides to that story. So and I'll talk about that in just a minute. The other side of the group, so for doctors who have already integrated, the responses were all across the board. So it was frustrations with not making enough money. Some doctors had gone belly up and got bankrupt from their integrated practice. Some doctors were having a really tough time navigating third-party payers. So they're struggling understanding how Medicare reimbursed or private insurance, or how to add therapies that added value, financial value to their practice. Some doctors were frustrated with just the complexity of integration, having to run and manage a huge team of people, having to juggle all these different types of therapies in the office. And also one of the big ones was the uncertainty of the future of integration. So I got all kinds of different answers from the folks who have already integrated. So this series is focused on one main theme. And this theme is that integration is there are different flavors, there's different levels, different paths of integration. So there's not a one-size cookie-cutter fits-all solution for your office. So when I ask a doctor, hey, how would you define integration? What does that look like to you? So if I were to ask you, Doc, if you picture your office as an integrated office, what does that look like? And here's how most people define it. It's the way that most, like the big management groups and practice consulting groups, teach integration, which is a big, hairy, bloated beast of a system to run, where you have lots of staff, you have full-time medical staff, you have lots of different insurance and cash-based therapies, you have complex care plans, you're very, very insurance reliant, and you're also, you're also cash reliant, right? Because these days you can't rely strictly on insurance. And so that's what I call typical integration. And when most doctors think, well, in order to do that, I would need at least $100,000 to get started. And then you're looking at an overhead of anywhere from $60,000 to $110,000, $120,000 per month. That is what I call conventional integration. That's what most doctors have in their mind's eye of what that model looks like. However, a lot of doctors don't realize is there are so many different other iterations of integration. And in fact, you can make integration whatever you want to make it. So I've been integrated for 7 years now, and I've helped dozens and dozens of practices integrate. And the funny thing is that each doctor wants something different from integration. And what we found over the years in our own practices and coaching other doctors is that there's really three paths. There's three main paths when it comes to integration. And I'm going to start, so let me switch to the slide. I hope you can see this on the back. So we have path 1, path 2, and path 3. And when we first came up with this concept of paths, I originally came up with the idea of levels. So you have level 1 integration, level 2, and level 3. But we scrapped that idea because what we realized is that level 1 makes it sound like, well, if you're down here, you're just a beginner in integration, and you should be up here at level 3. But that's not true. In fact, a lot of doctors choose path 1, or the first level of integration, because that's really what they want out of their practice. They're not aspiring to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different offices. They want one sort of niche integrated practice that can run right alongside their chiropractic practice. I'll break that down in a minute. Then we have path 2, which is just a different flavor, so to speak, of integration, and then path 3. So I've named them Streamlined Innovator. That's path 1. Path 2 would be a growth coordinator, and path 3 being a scaling operator. Each path is a completely distinct form of doing integration. So let me break down each path for you. And over the course of this next 5-part series, I'm going to break down path 1, path 2, and path 3 for you in more depth. For the sake of this episode, I want to give you just a big overall picture of these different paths of integration, so that you can potentially identify with one, but also know that it's not like, all right, here's your integration program. This is how it's done. Here's how we teach it. And this is how you need to do it. That you don't need to do it that way. So let me break down each of these paths for you. So path 1 is what we call streamlined, being a streamlined innovator. So this type of integration is where we typically lead with regenerative medicine. So regenerative medicine is a cash-based service. We don't bill it to insurance. It's just a cash pay type service. And this is a program that you can get started for 90% less cost than traditional integration. So remember just a few minutes ago, I said it typically takes about $100,000 on the low end to integrate your practice. That would include legal fees, your business setup. That includes equipment costs, coaching fees, hiring your medical staff, hiring your nurse practitioner, getting a chiropractor on board, buying a bunch of equipment. So it's very, very costly to get a conventional integrated office off the ground. However, if you're doing a niche type integration where you're doing regenerative medicine, you can get that practice up and running for less than $10,000. And when I tell chiropractors that, they're like, hey, I'd love to integrate. I just don't have the money to do it. Well, I'm like, well, what number did you have in mind? Like, well, I think I need at least 60, 70, 80K to get started. I'm like, no. It depends on what you want to do. So first, let's define why you want to integrate, what your goal is, and then we'll figure out which path is the right one for you. And a lot of doctors choose this path because it fits their budget, it fits the goal, what they want to get out of their clinic, but they don't realize it doesn't actually cost a lot of money. There are doctors who will charge you a bunch of money to do integration, but that's not necessary. You can get an office like this running with less than $10,000. You can get it started in under 90 days. So it doesn't have to be this big, complicated system that you have to overwhelm your office and your staff with and overwhelm yourself with. So this is a low overhead system. One of the biggest issues with conventional integration is this massively high overhead. To give you an idea, when we were conventionally integrated, our overhead was anywhere from 100, 80, 90, 100. We had $110,000 per month overhead. So you got to see a ton of patients for that. You got to bill a ton of insurance for that. That's not what everyone wants out of integration. So what we teach in this model of path number 1 is a low overhead system. So you can keep most of what you collect. So it's profitable at the end of the day. And then we teach you how to integrate in less than 90 days. So if you're not running this through private insurance and Medicare and third-party payers, you can get a system like this running in really 2 months. You can do it in much less than 90 days. And this is a system, so you're not going to, with this type of system, some doctors may collect more, but this is a system that generally brings in about $20,000 to $40,000 in revenue per month. Right, so it can be a low, mid, or even high 6-figure revenue generator for your office. And if you can keep your overhead low, which is what we teach, you should be able to take home a big chunk of that in terms of pay that you bring home at the end of the day. So this is a really streamlined system. A lot of doctors will run this path 1 integration on a part-time basis. So they're running their full-time chiropractic job, and they're using this type of therapy and integration for certain patients in their clinic. Regenerative medicine is great for people who have knee pain, hip arthritis, lower back and neck arthritis. It's a great thing to add to your chiropractic clinic. It gets great results. And one of the things that we do with this system is that it's, I've taught this system over and over and over again. We've got it down to a science. So we're the only group that I know of in our profession that offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. And this is big for doctors because one of the biggest hesitations for docs, like, yeah, I would love to integrate, but I'm worried about the risk. I'm worried about like the liability and the overhead, all this stuff. They have all these concerns. Well, if we can't get you to what we've just told you on this page, like you don't pay us anything. So it allows you this opportunity to get a taste for what integration looks like and regenerative medicine looks like. And if like at the end of 90 days, you're like, man, this is not what I thought it was, or Dr. Wells, you're full of crap, we just give you your money back. You don't owe us anything. So this is a great way. We're just trying to take as much risk off the table for doctors so they can actually feel comfortable taking a step forward and integrating their practice without having to worry about the money and the finances and the overhead. We've figured all this stuff out for you. So if you've ever been on the fence, and this is totally a plug for my program, but if you're sitting on the fence and you're considering integration, like we've made it so easy, so affordable to get started in a really simplified way. That's why we call it being a streamlined innovator. We've streamlined the process. So that would be what we call path one with integration. So path number two, this is what we call a growth coordinator. So this is for doctors who want to get a little bit more out of their practice than just running one or two cash-based therapies. So with a growth coordinator, what we're attempting to do here is help as many patients as possible. So you're going to see more patients. We're going to maximize your potential revenue. And we do that by strategically adding certain insurance-based therapies to your practice to run right alongside your cash-based therapies. And these things work very closely hand in hand. And the strategy that we use here is we're making regenerative medicine incredibly affordable for patients by using their insurance. And we have a strategy for that. I'm not going to talk about that in this episode, but this is for doctors who say, yeah, I would really like to build a very strong 6-figure business and potentially a 7-figure business. You can do that with this program, and you can do it without having to have these like 15, 20, 25 different like crazy types of therapies and just trying to bill the heck out of insurance just for the sake of billing purposes. So there's a way to do insurance and regenerative medicine in a really streamlined way, and that is path number two. So this is a system where you're expected to bring in revenue $40,000 to $100,000 plus in revenue. It's a great system for areas that are competitive. So one of the biggest objections I get from people running cash regenerative medicine businesses is that they have a lot of competition, especially if you live in a big city. So if you're in Chicago or Dallas or New York or LA, San Francisco, chances are you have a lot of competition with regenerative medicine. So we're using path number two to create a very competitive program that really gets rid of all your competition because you're making regenerative medicine extremely affordable for patients. So if you want to learn more about path two, I've got a webinar on this, it's a case study and a training that you can watch that explains and details this path. And I'm also going to go over the path number two in more detail in 2 more podcast episodes, which I think is number 16. And this is also, here's like the biggest, I think one of the biggest selling points to path number two is that it should be staff driven. So because these are medical services that we're providing patients, your medical staff should be able to run the program. And this is a system where you don't have to, there's no like high ticket sales. There's no complicated case management. This is truly a staff driven system. Once you get it set up, once you get your staff trained, they should be able to handle this type of system with no problem. So it doesn't require a ton of input on your end, which gives you more time to do other things, which brings me into path number 3. And this is what we call a scaling operator. So let's say you're integrated, maybe you're on path 1, maybe you're on path 2, and you've got that down. The next question then becomes, all right, what do I do now? So for some doctors, that's all they want, right? They want to have a healthy revenue stream. They want to be able to work hard, but also go home to their family, enjoy time outside of work, and be able to save up for houses, cars, retirement, that kind of thing. But some doctors want to go bigger. Some doctors are really ambitious and they have a lot of tenacity and drive and they want to grow their practice. Maybe that means expanding their existing practice. Some doctors I work with have multiple clinics already, but they want to grow to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different clinics. There's a way to do that. Now, when a lot of doctors are first introduced to integration, this is sort of a selling tactic that a lot of different groups use, and I don't like it. Here's what happens. They say, all right, here's this integration model. You're going to implement this in your clinic. And then within the first couple of years, we're going to go to what's called phase 2. And phase 2 is when we get you out of the business and the practice can run itself. But the problem with that is that these clinics are oftentimes so complicated to run that it's not realistic for most doctors to ever get to phase 2. They sell the dream, but when it comes down to actually doing it, it's very, 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 very complicated, especially if you don't have the right tools to grow and scale your business. So on episode 18, so 3 episodes from now, I actually have a guest. His name is Warren Phillips, one of the smartest guys I know in the chiropractic profession. And he's a master. He runs several different successful businesses, a super successful guy. And he's going to give us some tips on what you can do to prepare yourself for scaling a business and what that actually looks like, and what is a realistic expectation for growing and expanding your practice. So this is a guy that's helped a lot of other doctors do it, and I'm really excited to have him on the podcast, and I know you're going to get a ton of information. We've actually pre-recorded that episode, so he's got a ton of amazing information to share with you. But this is like the third path. So the third path, when you get to this point, and if you want to scale your business, we can help you with that as well. And what that involves is really, there's 4 different steps to it. But the first part is just getting the right mindset, establishing a good team, having good management, organization, and tactics in place so that you can actually grow your practice without imploding your practice. Like so many times I see doctors, like they add a service to their office, whether it's integration or decompression or functional medicine or weight loss. And because they're adding more stress and more responsibility onto their staff, their office implodes. So rather than growing, it shrinks because you got away from what you were good at and just added a bunch of extra burden and bottlenecks into your practice. So there's a way to scale smartly. There's some steps that lead up to that we help doctors with. So I hope you understand, like when you look back at these 3 different paths, one is not better than the other. Some doctors are very, very happy doing path 1. Some doctors, I want to do path 2 and that's all I want to do. I don't want multiple clinics. I don't want to have to run that kind of operation. Where some doctors, and this has been me, we were really happy running multiple locations. I can tell you it's a lot of work and there's a lot that goes into it, but that's what some doctors aspire to do. And so all 3 of these different paths have their place in integration. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, you know what? I would love to do just path 1. We have a plan for you. Or you're saying, hey, I would love to do path 2. I'm not integrated yet, but path 2 is exactly, I want a good, healthy mix of insurance and cash-based services, and I want to grow my practice. Like that's the perfect path for you. So I hope this makes sense to you. I hope you can understand too, again, the main theme is that integration is not the same. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Although some practice groups teach it that way, it is not in reality that way. And I talk to so many doctors every week. They're like, man, I wish I had done a simpler version of integration. I wish I had done simplified integration. I bought this huge program. I got this big, thick binder, and I really don't know how to run my integrated program effectively. So if that's you, we have a plan for you. And I really encourage you to listen to the next 4 episodes in this series of 5 on path 1, path 2, and path 3 and scaling your practice. So Doc, I hope you found this helpful and beneficial. I really appreciate you being on here today and look forward to seeing you on the next episode, number 15, where we'll discuss more about path number 1. Have a great day. Take care and God bless. Bye-bye. Hey, innovators. Thanks for listening to the Simplified Integration Podcast. The fact that you're listening tells me that you're like me, someone who loves simplicity. And the truth is, those who embrace simplicity are some of the greatest innovators. So I hope you got a ton of value from what we covered on today's episode. Be sure to subscribe and share with other docs that you feel could benefit from greater sophistication through simplification and innovation. If you've got specific questions that you'd like answered on this podcast, or you've got specific topics that you'd like me to discuss, just shoot me an email at info@integrationsecrets.com. That's info@integrationsecrets.com.